Okay guys, to drop the subframe, so we're going to take off the sway bar bolts, all the nuts, and then we're going to do the lower ball joint, and then take out the drive shafts and just leave them on the car instead of taking them off completely from the hubs. Alright guys, so that's once it's undone, you just take off this bolt of the nut and the sway bar should come off. Just wiggle it around. Done. Alright. Okay guys, this bolt doesn't want to come off, so we're gonna start with the impact business. Alright, and there you go. I'm wasting time on these bolts. So now, just to smack a hammer. Done. Alright, so that one's done. And now we're gonna take this one off. Same thing. Okay guys, that one took a little bit more convincing and it did came off. So now we're gonna go on the other side and free our subframe. And that way we can pull out the drive shafts. Okay guys, so another thing we need to do before the drive shaft comes off on this side. So we need to undo 3 bolts of the carrier bearing. Alright, there's the second 10mm bolt. Okay guys, so to get that top one off, you just need a 3-inch extension on these angular 90-degree, whatever they're called, and the bolt comes off. So now the carrier bearing is free to move. There we go. Now we can take this off, guys.
So you just put it in here and push out. There, okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay guys, just use a pry bar, chuck it in the gap there, and then just go and it comes right off. It takes a little bit of an effort, but then there it is. Done. There we go. Okay guys, so now that we got the drive shafts out of the way, we're gonna start taking the subframe off. I'm gonna start at the back. Okay guys, so 16 mils is the exact socket that fits, and 5/8 works perfect on these bolts too. So pop that one out. We got 3 of those off. Now we're gonna go to the front and put some kind of support under there and start loosening these off. Okay, the next bolt is gonna be that one that's not showing up on the camera right now. Here we go. The top mount there. Frame's coming down a bit. Okay guys, so we put the motorcycle jack supporting the subframe now. And now we're gonna just lower it from each side. Alright. Okay, now we're gonna start dropping the subframe off slowly to see if it clears. Okay guys, so you can just turn the drive shaft out of the way. Guys, so you gotta keep an eye for your O2 sensor cable that actually plugs onto your coolant lines for the power steering reservoir, not coolant line. Alright, everything seems to be clear. Okay guys, so we've dropped the subframe off. We're just gonna leave it right there. I have to change the lines on my power steering reservoir, so I'll do those right now as well because they're leaking pretty bad. And now on the clutch side, we have all this space to finally work with. There we go. Rob's putting a jack under the engine to support it. And then we're gonna start attacking the bell housing bolts. Okay guys, so now we got all this space, but we gotta do the bolts on the starter motor. They're also part of the bell housing assembly. There's one here, there's one on top. So the heat shield has to be wiggled out from here. I don't know the subtle way, that's why I didn't film it. I just had to literally wiggle it out. And now we're also gonna change the gaskets on the oil filter housing gasket, because those are leaking pretty bad too. And the oil cooler O-rings.
Yeah, it's quite good. Let me push back on the engine.
Yeah. How long are these bloody bolts?
Long.
Okay, this is one of the hardest bolts on the bell housing to do, guys. When you're doing this, you might want to take the engine out, honestly. It's easier to do the job with the engine out. Rob disagrees with me, but I think it's easier. Finally, that one comes out. Okay, starter's out of the way. Okay guys, so when you're dropping the gearbox, just a couple of tips that we just learned from having a colossal mistake on our hands. Everything actually worked out. You gotta make sure that this connector, that comes off. Okay, and then these two things, you gotta just pinch them with the pliers and then pop them from the bottom with the screwdriver. So you just gotta hold them like that. They sit in these brackets. So pinch them from here. That gives you enough space. And then you put the screwdriver below it and pop them out. Okay guys, so we took off the pressure plate and the clutch. And it just comes off with these dinky little Torx bolts. They just hold the clutch and the pressure plate onto the flywheel. And this one's done. It's all the way down to the rivets. As you can see, there's nothing left. And pressure plate doesn't seem to be scarred too much. Now I'm gonna start undoing the flywheel bolts. So we'll just basically put a piece of metal from here onto the dowel pin, which will stop it from moving when we torque it. Here's the throwout bearing. It's shot completely. Look at the play in it. Sounds like the old dial-up telephones. The plastic bushings look okay in there. I took a peek. They don't look worn out or cracked. So I'm gonna leave them as it is. But it seems like there's oily residue in there, so we'll check the rear man seal once we take off the flywheel. All right, let's start taking off the bolts off the flywheel. These are 13 mil bolts. All right guys, now the last bolt's gonna come off. Flywheel is fairly heavy. Okay, now I just use a screwdriver and pop the rear main seal out. Just make sure you don't damage these surfaces where the new seal's gonna go on. Be very, very careful. Alright, I'm just gonna put a little bit of oil on the inside so the seal can drive on there pretty easy. There, put it on. There we go. Now we can tap it in with the soft hammer. Alright, now it's time to mate the flywheel on it. Okay, now we're gonna start putting on the new flywheel. Keep going. Keep going.
Let's see.
Maybe there.
There, yeah. That's it.
And the Vallejo flywheel comes with shorter bolts, guys, because it's a thinner flywheel, which has red Loctite already on them. So just put them on and then tighten these to 90 Newton meters. And just in case you're wondering how we got it locked, we just made a metal piece that just locked onto the tab there. That did the trick. Alright guys, so now the gearbox is all prepped up. We've lubed the splines with the grease. Put some grease onto the throw up air, the clutch fork bits there. Alright, now time to put the clutch back on. Okay guys, so now we're going to start putting the pressure plate and the clutch plate on. And when you put it on the Valio kit, right in the middle, around the spline area, it actually says it gearbox side, and the flatter side goes towards the flywheel. Okay. There you go, that's on.
Yeah.
This is on.
Yeah.
Alright guys, this tool doesn't do much. You have to actually look around the clutch plate yourself to make sure that it's centered off and there's enough space around it. See how far it is, and then once you got the bolt sitting flush, then you can do half a turn until you start torquing them. Alright guys, so now once this sequence all ready to go, we're gonna torque it at 21 Newton meters. Just hold it. Okay, it's a crisscross pattern, so we go from here to there. Okay.
Maybe 6 o'clock.
Okay guys, so we couldn't film all the swearing and yelling when we were trying to put this box back in there, because that's what it gets down to. Two people trying to lift it up and putting it back in. But the way we did it was put the motorcycle jack under the transmission and lift it up, and lifted it up, matched the dowel pins on both sides, and then put 2 bolts on each side, balanced it, and now I'm just fitting the rest of the tranny bolts in it. Then we put the mounts on. This part went on first, and then had to wiggle the top end of it because the engine was moving so much. Had to line up this bolt, then the top one, and then it matched up. So this is not a full-on video that's showing every step of the way, but I can just explain the best I can. What is it? Here, there we go. Be careful with it guys, you don't want to break it. Put this on, and then tighten the bolts. Alright, let's go try the clutch. The clutch pedal feels very soft. It should be great for the city driving, but the time will tell. Just gonna start installing the shifter cables now. Alright, the cables are on there now. Now we can try and see how the clutch is engaging. Just hoping for okay, clutch engages, disengages properly. For now, it's time to do the back bolts on the bell housing. Okay, so now we gotta get the starter in too. before we do that, there it is. It's a small metal piece that just covers the gap in between. Okay guys, getting the top starter bolt is much easier from here than from the bottom. There's plenty of access. See, there's a whole big gap here that you can put your hand through. The camera's not really. Top bolts on, and now we gotta really see if we have all the bolts in on the bell housing. Looks like we do. Okay, now we finish up with the bottom bolt from below. Now we can go up and do this bolt here. Okay, check to see everything's good. Okay guys, so now we've torqued the bell housing bolts. They're torqued to 63 foot-pounds or 85 Newton meters. And you gotta do them all. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's at the one at the bottom 5, and then don't forget this sneaky one that's right under the loom right there, and then they go on the other side. There's 2 on the starter, 1 on top, 1 at the bottom, and then there's 1 more between the starter bolt and the top there, just right about there. So just tighten those up, and then your gearbox is all secured. Now I gotta actually start working on my oil filter housing gasket while I've got everything opened up.